3 months ago, I realized I couldn't remember a single piece of content I'd consumed in the past week. Not one Instagram reel, not one TikTok, not even one YouTube short. I genuinely couldn't remember anything. And that scared me a bit because I'd spent hours of my life looking at it, so I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I decided to try and read a book, and I decided to read it on my mini e-reader. The book I read was called Hokkaido Highway Blues. It's about a Canadian guy who got drunk one night and he bet his fellow colleagues he couldn't hitchhike the entire length of Japan from the southernmost tip to the northernmost tip. And somewhere around page 200, this book did something to my brain that no digital detox, app blocker, or screen limit timer ever came close to doing. I need to tell you about what happened because it's probably different to what you might think. So here's where I was originally. I'd get home from work, I'd sit on the couch, I'd turn on the TV, and I'd let the algorithm pick whatever I watched. I'd be in line at the coffee shop, I'd pull my phone out of my pocket, and I wouldn't do it because anything had buzzed or I got a notification or I needed to. I just would. I'd open Instagram, I wouldn't see anything specific, but I'd scroll, I'd put it away, and 5 minutes later, I'd be doing that same dance over and over again. The thing that scared me wasn't the time I was wasting. It was that I genuinely couldn't remember any of it. Even now, if you asked me what I watched last week on Instagram or even at all in the past 6 months, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Hours of my life, and it was all just a blur, completely gone. I personally believe that you are what you eat. And I don't mean that in a, if you eat a tomato, you're a tomato kind of way. I mean it from a brain kind of way. The content you consume, the ideas that you read and see every day is going to build up your brain, build up your ideas and yourself for the future. And I was eating the equivalent of junk food every single day. Algorithmic junk. I wasn't choosing what I was consuming, the algorithm was. And the algorithm doesn't care about me. It cares that I keep scrolling. It just wants me to stay on the app as long as possible. So I decided to make some changes before I read the book. The first one was to downgrade my phone. I gave my iPhone 14 Pro Max to my mum because hers was dying, and I downgraded to this, an iPhone 13 mini. Why did I choose to go from a 14 Pro Max to an iPhone 13 mini? Well, this one still has CarPlay, so I can still use it as a tool day to day. It's got a calendar, navigation, I can contact my wife, but it is smaller, it's less appealing to look at, and the battery is so much worse. So it means I can't scroll all day, because if I try to, I'm not gonna have a phone with any battery in the evening. And that's really important for me. I kinda need to force it to happen. Every time I pull it out of my pocket, I'm reminded there's a cost to scrolling. I also changed my space. I made my office more appealing. We're in it right now. And it made it so I'd actually go up here rather than melting on the couch. But limiting all the fun stuff in your life without replacing it with something is dreadful. It's just not gonna work. You end up sitting there, staring at a wall, doing absolutely nothing. So I decided to read some books. But here's the thing, I'm a 26-year-old man. So obviously, I went straight for the hardest books possible to read. I tried reading Crime and Punishment, a great easy read after a full day of work when you've got no energy left. It was a pure genius idea. No, I got 30 pages in and I realized, hang on, maybe reading about a gritty Russian psychological thriller about a guy murdering his landlord after I've finished work isn't exactly what I want to be doing every day. So I started over and I had this insane realization. What if I read something that I was actually interested in? So I did a bit of research. I looked around my house, I borrowed some books from friends, and I ended up with 5 books that I was considering. The first one was The Promised Land by Barack Obama, because I was interested in the book and the story, but it's too long. I knew I was going to lose momentum through the way. The second was Tao Te Ching, but it's short. I've already read it in the past, and it kind of feels like cheating. I don't really view this as reading a book. The third one was Crime and Punishment. We'd already covered that one. The fourth one was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and I'm probably still going to read that soon. I just wasn't in the mood for this kind of story. And then we had Hokkaido Highway Blues on this mini e-reader. It's a travel book, and it's something that I genuinely wanted to read. Not because I should read it or because it's a classic, just because I found the idea interesting. This was the main hurrah moment, the unlock for myself. Just picking a book I was curious about, not something that I should be reading or a classic or something I have to read. So some quick context on the book itself though. Will Ferguson is a Canadian. He was teaching English in Japan, and one night he's drunk on sake with some colleagues, and he announced he was going to hitchhike the length of Japan, from Cape Sada at the bottom to Cape Soya in the far north. It's about 1,800 miles or 3,000 kilometers, and the idea was he's going to follow the cherry blossom front as it slowly goes from the south tip to the north tip. What made this book different for me, and the bit that made it work, is that there's genuinely one main character, but the cast is rotating every single chapter. Every single ride, every single hitchhike journey is with someone new. You've got people like a mountain climbing florist who genuinely believes the gods live in the mountains, a Tokyo professor who spent his entire career studying the social lives of Japanese monkeys and how they're superior, a guy transporting defective pachinko machines that are in need of repair, but that really means people were winning and they needed to stop that. There was also a guy driving alone in his own car by himself with a surgical mask, long before that was common in 2020. Every single chapter, you're in someone else's car, their safe space, and every chapter you get a different life and a different story. This made it really easy for me to pick it up and put it down for small, simple reads on my lunch break or just before bed. The commitment was low, but that doesn't mean the book didn't have substance. When I was about 200 pages in, I hit a moment I genuinely wasn't ready for. A scene which made me emotional. So Will, our traveling author, met a guy called Yoshi at a cherry blossom party somewhere along his journey. I can't remember exactly where, but Yoshi was similarly an English teacher, he was softly spoken, and he had a secret dream of riding a motorbike across America someday. Yoshi, however, knows his dad speaks English and might want to meet Will, so he invites him to go meet his parents. On the walk over, Will asked Yoshi and just made sure his dad wasn't in Nagasaki or Hiroshima or anything, because tensions are tight. Yoshi says no, but admits his dad was a prisoner of war. Will, of course, hesitates at this, but they end up going to the house anyway, and Mr. Nakamura, the dad, is introduced. He's a cheerful guy. He's pulling out photo albums of Yoshi, having a comedic routine about his terrible wife, joking about how before they were married, she was the best, and now she farts all the time. It's in a comedy point of way. They all end up drunk. The main characters singing karaoke, singing Blue Suede Shoes. They're all going through more photos and drinking sake, and it's just a great moment. And then there was a part that really wrecked me. They were flipping through the holiday photos. There was pictures from Guam and Australia, and Will, our traveler, points to a picture of the beach, and he guesses, Guam. The old man said Saipan, not Guam. So our author is confused, and he's a bit of a dick, to be honest. He's very blunt throughout the book. He goes, why would you want to go to Saipan? The old man, with his exact same cheerful voice that he'd be using all night to talk about fish and his terrible wife, says, to see my old place. I went to Saipan because years ago in the war, I was the only one from my platoon who survived. Everybody else passed away. He then continues to tell our protagonist the whole story. He was young, he was 18, he'd been studying architecture, so they sent him to Saipan to build the barracks and help support the war efforts. 800 American ships ended up circling the island, or that's what he says, and his platoon had no bullets left. So what happened is they were pushed to the cliffs, and people were not wanting to be captured, to say the least. Other members of his platoon were circling around grenades and pulling the pins. But he was too young. He did not want to do that. He was not ready to die. So what he did is he turned himself in. He waved his white flag and walked over to the American troops. And that's where he met someone called Bobby. Bobby Private D Company, Oklahoma, is what he called him. Same age as Nakamura. Bobby taught him English, and there's this scene where the Americans are bringing candy into the camp, and the Japanese officers line up to eat first, and Bobby lets the children and other people eat before the officers. So Bobby really treated the prisoners of war very well. Nakamura unwraps a photo, and it's a photo of Bobby. It's wrapped in tissue paper, then wax paper, and it's like 4 layers deep in pristine condition, and he introduces it. Bobby, Oklahoma, my USA friends. He's telling Will that he looks just like you, that he's got your eyes, but he doesn't. Our protagonist doesn't correct him. They talk about it. It's a bit awkward. Will feels like it's time to leave, so he tries to leave. They're both drunk and it's going off the rails. As he tries to, Nakamura tries to stop him. And after back and forth, when he finally leaves, the older man salutes him and says, "Bobby, don't leave," or it was something along those lines that I can't do it justice. You have to read the book to understand. But in the moment, it genuinely had me tearing up and crying. Like it was very, very sad. This man thought he saw his American savior from back in the day, the man who saved his life during the war. It was an emotional moment I haven't had from a different from a book or any piece of media, at least that I can recall recently. I couldn't stop reading when it happens. That's not something I was going to get if I continued to scroll Instagram reels. But I powered through the book and I finished it, and it got a little bit strange. Reading that book changed my day-to-day in ways I wasn't expecting. At work, I would take my lunch breaks and I'd walk laps of the building, reading on this little device, getting my steps in whilst getting my words in. Instead of sitting at my desk scrolling or waiting in a line somewhere and not remembering anything of what I was doing, I'd be reading. When I went to coffee queues, I would be previously scrolling, but now I would just sit there waiting for the coffee in my own head, thinking about the book or maybe even what I want for dinner or nothing at all, which was fine because it was a win for me. I was losing the habit of grabbing my phone. My whole workday started to feel different. It was smoother because I didn't have this compulsion, just pretend this is my phone, to just grab this and check my phone all the time. Every quiet moment where I'd reach for my phone was gone. I was no longer doing so. I was focused on work, the days went quicker, I was more engaged. And the weird thing is, even when I did fail, like even when I did pull out my phone and start scrolling Instagram, I would have scrolled one reel, maybe two, and I had a bit of clarity. Like I have this moment and I was present and I could just be like, what am I watching? Why am I watching this? And I just chose to do something else. Reading a book didn't kill the habit of grabbing my phone, but it somehow changed my brain to realize what it was doing. I think we've really been thinking about phones wrong and having the wrong conversation. Everyone's talking about screen time and doom scrolling, how many hours, how many scrolls, like it's a time and a budget problem. But I don't think that's really what's being stolen. I read online the average person checks their phone about 144 times a day, which seems incredibly high. But every time you pick your phone up, your brain is leaving a little bit of your attention stuck at whatever you've just looked at. Your mind never comes all the way back. The phone isn't stealing just your time, it's just training you to react to it all the time. Every time you get a notification, you might get a phantom buzz and not even have one and still pull your phone out to click and swipe and look at the Instagram reels. These companies use those same techniques that pachinko machines and slot machines use to keep you going, random intervals of dopamine. They get you to react, they get you to want to keep pulling it open and getting something out of it, but the substance within it is so small. Reading is the exact opposite. There's one stream of information here. It's just whatever sentence you're reading and the next one and nothing more. I also did some more research and people show that with brain scans, reading shifts you out of this dopamine high phase flight or flight mode, and it switches you into like a meditative state that some of these apps are trying to do, like these meditation apps. And they seem to fail at it. So the book didn't fix my phone. My phone had trained me wrong. The book being slow, immersive, non-algorithmic, there's no notifications. It's taught me to have patience and to sustain again. And once that muscle memory came back, I could finally look at the phone with the right eyes. This book taught me to be patient. That's the whole thing. That's all I needed. A bit of a break to step back and be able to really evaluate what my phone was and what it was doing. I'd encourage you to read a book, any book. Don't pick the hardest one though. Pick the one you want to read. Don't pick a classic that's going to impress people on your shelf. Pick something that you just want to read, something you're genuinely curious about. It sounds simple, and it is, it's pretty stupid, but it's something that I didn't think about. That was the thing that changed it for me. And look, I'm not cured. My wife still sends me reels and I get pulled in a little bit here and there, but that compulsive pocket pull is gone and I catch myself scrolling much quicker. That moment where I've sat on the couch for 3 hours and not had any recollection of what I was doing is pretty much gone. And 3 months ago, I would have told you that was impossible. If you want to see the rest of how this pans out, the e-reader, my phone, the books I'm going to be reading going forward, subscribe. I'm going to have a new video every 2 weeks or so, and let me know down in the comments some book recommendations, because I really want to have some easy reads, which are still informative and have great lessons to learn. I think I'm going to be reading this book next, Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. It was recommended by a friend.